Hello and welcome back, and in this tutorial here we're going to do a couple of hopefully interesting things. We're going to um, animate a door opening and closing, and we're going to have that work in the game engine. Now before I do that, I'm just going to create my doorway, and to do that I'm going to go into face select mode, and I'm going to select these four faces and delete them, and then in vertex mode I'm going to add a face to either side here. Okay, so again, I'm not going to beautify this at all by adding in textures or colors. I'm just going to leave it as it is, grey. Before I add in the door, I'm going to set up the character, and there's numerous ways to set up the character in our game. We can use key input, it's a whole bunch of things, but I just want to show you an interesting way to do this. So let's do a little bit of game logic. So this is my character. Now I'll probably end up using this box as my character, even when I make a real character, as in like a 3D model of a character. I'll place it inside this box. I'll just make the box invisible in the game engine. So I'm not wasting my time putting the logic on this. This is the one we'll probably use. So Y is forward. So I'm just going to add a keyboard input, and I'm going to use my W key. I'm going to call this forward. Okay, and then over here I'm going to give it a motion actuator, and we're going to move positively on Y. We'll say 0.03, and we'll connect them. We'll press P in the game engine. We can't see anything. Right. We'll go to textured mode and press P, and I'm going to press the W key, and that's me moving forward. So not very quickly, but that's just fine for now. So now I want to turn. Now what I could do is I could add in two more keys, and I could, on Z, which is our vertical axis, I could add in rotation X and rotation Y. But let's not do that. Let's do a more interesting way of turning. So let's add in a mouse input, and we're going to use mouse movement as our input. And then over here we're going to add in a mouse actuator. So it's mouse sensor, so mouse input, and then this is mouse output, mouse action. And we're going to call this turn. Now this actuator normally turns the mouse on and off in terms of its visibility, but it also has another function, which is look, and we can use this for our, if we're making a first person shooter, we could use this for enabling us to look around. Now when I press P in the game engine and I move the mouse, I can now do all sorts of funky things. So let's go in here and change this. Let's turn off use X-axis and just use Y-axis. So I'm going to go P, and then in the game engine I can rotate this way, but I can't turn the way I want. So now let's turn that one off and turn this one back on and go P, and now I can turn left and right, but not up and down. So now if combined with my W for move forward, because I'm moving forward on the local Y-axis, not the global one, I can walk through walls. But I can use the mouse to steer the character, which I think is a more interesting way to navigate this world than simply keys. So that's how I'm going to move my character in this world. Okay, and let's just add in, select the lamp here. So I'm going to go back to my outliner, select my lamp, and wrong level. So actually this is probably worth exploring. So this was the lamp on level 1. I don't want the lamp on level 1, or sorry, in the main menu. I want There it is there, point. So I want this point lamp. So you can excuse me, you can kind of tidy up things here an awful lot by Blender will let you hide things by scene, by layer. So I'm gonna just make this a sun. So it's not beautiful, but we'll be able to see everything. Cool. Now let's move on to this door animation. So before I do anything, I'm just going to go save as. We'll call this stage 3. So stage 1 was the menu, stage 2 was doing the blueprint, making the walls, and stage 3 is going to be this door. So let's click in here and add a cube, and we're going to call this cube door, and door 1, and let's just name everything here we've got. So this is a plane, that shouldn't be a plane, we should call that walls. This plane is the ground, so let's rename that the ground, and this is just our lamp. We'll leave that there. I'll rename that later. So I'm going to go GZ1, so this is the right height, and I am going to go S on Y and then S on X. Now there are 3 ways to animate in Blender. Actually, there's probably more. There's more ways to do it, but there's 3 main ways to animate in Blender. The 3 main ways are a transformation, so something that moves in 3D space. So you are remembering all this information here, its scale, its rotation, its location. So that's a transformation. You can animate using deformation, which we haven't looked at all, which is using a thing called shape keys. So I could add in a base shape, and then I could add in a new distortion, and then I can move between here and there. So I could use that to put a dent in a car, or I can do all sorts of things with shape keys. But we're not going to use shape keys, and we're not going to use transformations. And the reason we're not going to use any of these things is we're going to use a bone. We're going to use an armature. The reason I choose that is that these aren't better than the other. But if we're going to be moving into Unity soon, and if we simply record this position here and then we record it open, with a few tweaks, that's not going to work for us. What's going to happen is when we go from Blender to Unity, this information is lost. Unity will not recognize transformational or shape key animations in Unity. You can actually get a plug-in for shape keys, but it won't remember the transformations. But it will very handily with a built-in sort of FBX component in it. It'll recognize all the animations based on bones. So the only reason I'm doing this based on bones is because, when we do this into the future, the technique will be you'll be familiar with it. So what am I going to do? I'm going to edit mode. I'm going to select these 4 and go Shift S, cursor to selected, and then in object mode I'm going to go Object, Transform, Origin to 3D Cursor. So now when I rotate this, it rotates that way. More importantly, this is where I'm going to add my bone. So I'm going to go Shift A, add armature, single bone, and then when we look here, this is our doorway, and I'm going to go or 90, enter. So I'm going to rotate the bone 90 degrees, and we're going to name this bone. We're going to call it door 1 rig, and that's it. We just have one bone, and we need to rotate it here 90, whoops, so it's in the right position. And now we're going to parent one to the other, so I'm going to select the door first, which is going to be the child, shift, and then right click on the bone, and then go Control P and select bone. So parent to bone. So now when the bone moves, the door will follow. So now the actual animation we're going to perform is going to be on this bone, not on the door at all. So let's do that. So we'll get ourselves a timeline. So let's bring this down here, turn that into a timeline, and how long will the door take to open? We'll open it in 1 second, so 25 frames. And we'll just move this over a little bit, and we'll turn this into our dope sheet, and from the dope sheet we will turn it into the action editor. So when you have a bone, you have to animate it here. We need to go into pose mode and select the bone. So we're in pose mode, and on frame 1 I want to remember this position, so I'm going to go I, and I'm going to put a keyframe on rotation. Now I'm not going to put it on location, rotation and scale, or on location and rotation, because what that'll do is remember this position. If I only remember the rotation, then if I duplicate this door, I can place it anywhere on the level and it'll open in that location because I haven't remembered the location. So I'm only going to keyframe rotation. So I'm going to go I, insert keyframe on rotation, and then at 25 we'll rotate it. Now I'm aware that I've entered the wall with the door, but we're not going to worry about that too much. And we have to figure out here, does this door open outwards or inwards? So if our character is walking forward, we don't want the door to push the character backwards, so we're actually going to rotate inwards to about there, and we'll go I and rotation. So this is our door, so we don't want it to rotate that way, so I'm going to put in an interim keyframe, and then we go, so let's delete that one and work our way out. So we're going to go from there to there and then up to 25. We'll rotate to there. Now we'll press Alt A, and there it is opening. Lovely. So that's my door opening to let the character in. So now all we need to do is implement that in the game engine. So we'll save that, and we'll go back to frame 1. Okay, so the game logic that we want to use, I'm going to get rid of this timeline now. The game logic that we want to use is not on the door, it's on the bone. So let's go to object mode and put in some game logic. So the first thing we need to kind of remember, so let's just press P now in the game and walk forward. So at the moment I can walk through the door, so that's not great. So let's go back to our properties here. So let's make this object here a dynamic object. So we'll make it a rigid body, and we'll tell it that its collision is based on a box, because it is a box. So we'll go P and we'll walk forward now, and we're stuck at the door, so we can't get in. That's exactly what we want, and we want it then to be able to walk through when the door opens. I'm going to put a tag on my player. When I say a tag, that's the terminology used in Unity. It's just, we're going to add a property to the player. We're going to call the player, because we're very original, we're going to call the player player. Now, what type of property this is, what variable this is irrelevant. I'm using this variable as a tag, so I'm just going to say if something approaches the door with this, open the door. So I don't want to be able to fire a bullet at the door and have the door react to the bullet. I only want the door to open when the player walks through. So now let's have a look here at the armature. If I put the logic on the door actually has no animations on it, so we can't play an animation. It would have to send a message to the armature, and then the armature play the animation. So you can see it would be sort of a waste of resources to start putting logic on the door. So the logic is going to go on the armature. Now what do we want? Well, we want a near sensor, and we want to put in the property player because we only want it to react to the player. We'll get back to distance in a minute. We're going to go over here and we're going to go to action, and we're going to say play the door rig, door 1 rig action, and we're going to start at frame 1 and end at frame 25. Cool. And we just need to link them together. Now there's a couple of things here. There are a number of ways to get things to play. So we could use ping pong, which would open the door and then close it. In a similar way Flipper would as well. So, but we just want it to play once. So we're going to get it to play once. And this here, it says restore last frame when switching on and off. And we'll leave that there because we may want to get the door to then close, but I'll show you how to do that maybe a bit later. So let's just see these distances here. So distance 1 and then reset distance. So let's press P and then move towards the door. So nothing has happened and the door is opened and I can go in. So that works. Now if we want the door to close, we can do all sorts of interesting things. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll leave it for there for now because we're at 16 minutes in. So we will just leave with the door opening, and then in the next tutorial I'll show you how to get it to close. Okay.